Thanks for joining us on Shannons Club TV, where we take a unique Australian perspective on road and race car histories.
We've received a wonderful response to these paired histories on the Shannons Club website, where you can catch up on a huge selection of previous episodes. Stay tuned as we take a road trip with the proud owner of our feature car and get a market update from the Shannons auctions team.
In today's episode, the tank-tough 1970s Japanese cars which were winners in both rallying and Chrysler showrooms, the Mitsubishi Galant and Lancer.
Has there ever been a better example of the tail wagging the dog than Mitsubishi and Chrysler Australia? In 1971, Chrysler Corporation bought a 15% share in the newly formed Mitsubishi Motors Corporation. But by 1980, Mitsubishi was able to buy out Chrysler Australia from Chrysler Corporation. Aussies had been familiar with the Galant sub-brand since 1971, when the Colt Galant was introduced here. It soon became the Chrysler Valiant Galant because in those days the Valiant name still had kudos. A facelifted edition of the local Galant arrived in 1972. With a 1.6 litre engine in the original compact body, it was perhaps the best version. Certainly, motoring magazines began comparing it with bigger cars like the Datsun 180B. By late 1974, Chrysler Oz was importing the little Mitsubishi Lancer and assembling Galants locally. That Lancer was astonishingly fast. It made 87 horsepower as a 1.3 and 95 with the optional 1.5 litre engine, which was soon on offer. Mark, in that early to mid-1970s context, the Lancer really was a revelation, wasn't it?
It really was. When you think of how much smaller and lighter than the Galant it was, yet it was powered by a 1.6 litre engine at its most sporty tune with the twin-carb 1600 GSR. I mean, there was no wonder this car was such a phenomenally successful rally car in its day, and indeed the Galant to a lesser extent, both of which I'll cover a bit later on.
Both of them classics.
Yes.
In July 1974, the larger GC model with VJ Valiant-like egg crate grille was introduced. By this time, there was a wagon and an elegant coupe would follow. The smaller Lancer gave Chrysler Australia its best ever range of small cars, which would soon include a striking hatchback variant. Essentially, the Lancer was the successor to the little Galant sold here from 1971, while the GC Galant was directly competitive on size with the 180B and Corona. The Lancer weighed just 830 kilos. With its great power-to-weight ratio and agile handling, it was soon a motorsport regular. Looking back, those early 1970s shine as halcyon days. Front-wheel drive was only just beginning to arrive in mainstream small cars, with the Fiat 128 and Honda Civic prominent examples locally. Chrysler Australia had perhaps the best of the last so-called conventional, read rear-wheel drive, sedans. As I often say when discussing small rear-wheel drive cars of the 1960s and 1970s, wouldn't we love to drive something like this now? Mark, just imagine having a 1974 Lancer for Club Motorsport.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's plenty of Club Motorsport enthusiasts out there today doing just that, in a car which broke all rallying records in the 1970s. Mitsubishi was one of numerous Japanese manufacturers to use motorsport as a product development and marketing tool in the 1970s to build credibility and drive sales in major export markets. That included Australia, where it achieved unparalleled success in the nation's most prestigious rally, the annual Southern Cross International. In a remarkable period of dominance, Mitsubishi and its star British driver Andrew Cowan won 5 consecutive events, starting in 1972 with the 1.6 litre A50 Galant. That year, Cowan and navigator John Bryson spearheaded a 4-car Mitsubishi attack against Japanese arch-rival Datsun, with a multi-car squad led by Rauno Aaltonen in a 240Z. The Flying Finn finished a close second to Cowan in the most competitive Southern Cross since the first held in 1966. John, yeah, the Southern Cross was to Australian rallying effectively what Bathurst was to circuit racing. Those victories for Cowan, one after the other in the Lancer, that must have had a huge effect on, particularly on young buyers.
I think rallying in the 60s and 70s had a much higher profile than it does now. And the road cars somehow seemed very well connected to the rally cars. And it had a real aura, that event, didn't it?
I think the rally cars, or the relevance of rallying in that era too, we had a lot more dirt roads in Australia, a lot more poor secondary roads. So a car that succeeded in rallying was really put up on a pedestal, wasn't it? Because it was relevant to a lot of everyday driving.
That's absolutely right, yes.
Yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah.
The smaller, lighter and nimbler A70 Lancer, launched in 1973, had rally car written all over it, particularly the hottest model in the range, the twin-carb 1600 GSR. Its international rallying debut was in the 1973 Cross, where in Cowan's skilled hands it proved to be even more effective than the Galant by leading home a Lancer clean sweep of the first 4 places. Against growing competition from Nissan and Subaru, Cowan won again in 1974, in which only 7 of the original 64 starters finished. The combination of the rugged Lancer's faultless reliability and Cowan's sublime skill resulted in another victory in 1975, before chasing a record 5 wins in a row the following year. The 1976 Cross was the pinnacle of international participation, with works teams from Mitsubishi, Datsun, Ford UK, Holden and even BMW. After a thrilling fight with Datsun's local hero George Fury, Cowan's 5th consecutive triumph heralded the end of Mitsubishi's involvement in the Cross after a stunning era of success, which also included 2 prized Lancer victories in the East African Safari. Of course, Galants and Lancers continued to be seen in the Cross and other Australian rally events for years to come, further enhancing their reputations as 2 of the toughest Japanese cars ever built. Other great episodes of Shannons Club TV are available to view anytime on the club website.
My name's Mel and this is my 1974 Chrysler Galant. So this Galant I've had for 11 years now, so I'm a member of the family. The car from factory is the original 4-door. The favourite feature is definitely the colour of the car. Everyone absolutely loves the green go colour. I was pretty lucky when I purchased this car. She was pretty much as you see her now. She just needed a bit of a clean up. The car's powered by a Saturn 1600 motor. 4-speed manual, rear wheel drive. The only thing I've done mechanically is replace all the brake lines. My favourite memory of the car is Mid-State Mopars a few years ago. I took her to the Motorcana on the Saturday and we won the Motorcana outright, and then on the Sunday I took her to the show in China. We also won the Fast Trophy. The car handles really well. She's quite a nice cruiser. She definitely loves the highways, but is just as nifty and nimble in town as well. Like driving a modern car. So I've been a Shannons member for about 14 years now, and I've added many cars to the insured list since. They've been fantastic to deal with, from my daily driver to my classic cars. I couldn't fault them. I do intend on keeping her in the family and hopefully passing her down to my 15-month-old daughter, Caitlin. Future plans for the car are pretty basic. We'll just tidy up the engine, give her a bit of a freshen up. Other than that, just use her as a club runner and keep her original.
Shannons National Auctions Manager Chris Borrabon has dropped by to bring us up to speed on the original Lancer and the original Galant. Welcome back.
Marco, eh?
Welcome, Christoph. The Lancer and Galant, they were quite interesting little cars when they were new, and they were quite a change for Chrysler Australia from the Hillmans, weren't they?
Absolutely.
How does the market see them now?
It's probably not one of these cars we see much on the market these days, or you really just don't see them on the
roads.
road. No.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, there were the affordable, you know, the affordable classic in their day, and I think, you know, they were used by the mums and the dads and as a runaround.
And the kids,
and
the kids,
yeah.
like, the young guys just hotted these things up and they
That's
drove
it,
them
yeah.
into the ground, rallies and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
You saw
yeah.
them, Lancers and Galants everywhere.
Yeah.
So, you know, trying to find an original one now, I think would be quite a
It's
process.
far and few on the roads, really, and it's, you know, I remember, you know, as a young guy, we used to run around in the Galant and travel all up the east side of Australia.
It was the young guy's
Yep.
car, wasn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
And it had a very hip Chrysler advertising campaign tied around the Lancer, so it was you know, it was really the car for its time. But I think as a result, so many of them got driven hard.
I think the Lancer sort of stands out really as probably the more appealing, because it went back to the idea the Galant kept getting bigger and the Lancer came in and it was about the same size as the first.
I think the Lancer had a better image,
it
a
was
sporting image.
funky.
Particularly.
Yeah, that's right,
It was
yeah.
so
Yep.
successful in the Southern Cross Rally, and everyone, you know, kids all latched onto it.
Yeah.
The 1600 GSR, you know, the twin carb,
Twin carb,
the hottest
1600,
model.
yep, absolutely.
That car just owned the 1970s. You know,
That's
in,
right.
in that division, didn't it?
I think the Lancer hatchback was a pretty interesting little car, don't you? Quite a snazzy jigger.
Definitely,
really.
I think that was probably the prettier car. You know, that's the one that probably caught my eye. I think the hatch, and I think, you know, the GDO model we never got here in Australia, but we have seen many come in as private imports over the years, and today very, you know, very desirable on the JDM scene. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just imagine one of those in one of the lurid colours that they had at the time,
Yeah.
just rocking up at the
Stripes.
Shannons auction. I mean, it'd get a
That's
bit of
it.
interest, wouldn't it?
Look, it would be quite interesting, and I think given the strength of the JDM scene today, I think really, you know, some of these 70s cars are really coming into their own.
So, not much chance of finding a Lancer or Galant in original trim these days.
No, not really. Not in a sedan, I think. I think most of them have been run down. You know, you might see the occasional little old lady car still come up. But I think a lot of those were passed down to the kids, you know, is what we just said.
And modifications like we see in a lot of Japanese cars is acceptable?
It's acceptable, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
that's terrific. Thanks, Chris.
No problem, guys.
And remember, you can keep up to date with all the latest Shannons auctions news on the Shannons Club website. For your own competition image of the Mitsubishi Galant and Lancer, visit AutoPic's comprehensive motorsport photo archive. Interesting reflecting on these cars, because this was sort of getting toward the end of the small rear-wheel drive car, because there was the Gemini, of course, these two, but you know, it started to change pretty rapidly, didn't it?
Yes, and we can now look back on that period as, in a sense, a golden era with small rear-wheel drive cars oversteering their way around the Australian landscape legally.
Yeah, because you know, front-wheel drive then just became the standard across the world, didn't it?
Well, I think front-wheel drive had become the orthodoxy in small cars by the end of the 1970s, but it took till almost the end of the 1980s before it was the orthodoxy in medium-sized cars.
Isn't it interesting though, when you look around and you see comments on various forums and things, people screaming out now for a rear-wheel drive car about the size of a Lancer or a Galant? Wouldn't that be fantastic if you could buy one new?
I'm one, and so you're another.
So you're the guy writing all those forums.
That's it, yeah.
But you can see there's a real pent-up demand for a car like that.
Absolutely.
They were so light.
Yes, they were.
Incredible.
Yes.
But I don't think it'd be possible in this day and age, you know, with the safety standards, the crash structures, all this
That's
stuff.
right.
I think that era's never going to come back.
That's right.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the classic Mitsubishi Galant and Lancer. Hope you can join us next time for Shannons Club TV. Bye for now.